in Woburn. I'm your host, Samantha Stone. We're going to talk taxes today, which I know is going to wake all of you up because it has to do with our pocketbook. But we also have a guest from Waste Management. We talk a lot. We see a lot of questions come in about what can be recycled and what can't be recycled and all the things that go on. And this time of year, we all make a lot of mess. And so it's perfect timing for Ed to come on board to help answer those questions. And we'll do that. And our pastor from the Methodist Church is here. And we're going to talk about an important gun vigil event that's happening this weekend and chat a little bit about that and share the details. So hopefully many of you can join us there. Welcome, Scott.
Good to see you, Samantha.
So we had a busy weekend in the city again this past weekend. There was the toy drive happened was it at the City Hall parking lot?
Yes.
Yeah, it looked like I saw some great pictures. It looked like there was.
Yeah, they did a great job. That was Woburn Little League Rec, and the Marines were down there with the boss. It was really a nice event, and as usual, people open up their hearts to these type of efforts, particularly around the holidays, and it was nice. Woburn stepped up again.
Yeah, I love seeing it. It's such a wonderful, it can be a very hard time of year for some people and families, and it's great to see Woburn community step up and help out in any ways that they can. So I love to see that. We did last time promise that we talk a little bit about taxes. So I have gone through the presentation that you shared with us as a city, and I appreciate that. And I have a few questions, and I want to start with what I think is really important good news in terms of how we compare ourselves to our neighboring cities. So there was data in there about residential and commercial tax rates, but I want to particularly focus on residential tax rates and sort of average tax bills for residents in lots of cities around us, Billerica and Burlington and Wilmington and Reading and such. And if I'm interpreting this data correctly, Woburn was the lowest average tax bill by a few $100s and by thousands compared to some other cities. My question to you is that a reflection of our property values or a reflection of our tax rate or, some combination of those things?
It's a combination. It's a good question. So for us to start with the shift. So we benefit in Woburn, and we have for a long time. We benefit from a robust commercial district, which helps. We push some of our taxes on a greater proportion of the tax onto commercial than residential would take. So so you get a break there. But values in Woburn have consistently been going up, and they get stronger and stronger, as you can see. So our values have really jumped. But yeah, when you're comparing the average value of a house in Woburn to the average value of a house in Winchester and Lexington, there's quite a significant difference. Burlington is really we look at Burlington as our very close comparator, and that's a good one to look at. And we kind of run neck and neck with Burlington as far as our values and how we compete for taxes, and they do a great job in Burlington too. I think it's a very well-run town, but like Woburn, they have a strong commercial base too, which helps offset the bill. But it is a good combination of all those.
Yep. Good. And one of the things that you mentioned, and I pulled the data for was we do, before tax rates are set, so the city does an appraisal of all the things that will contribute to the tax rate to help us understand how much revenue we're going to receive. And Woburn's value property across the city was 8.9 and change billion. Last year, it's 9.43 and change billion dollars, which seems a significant increase. I don't know how that compares to past years. Is that a pretty typical change for us?
It is pretty typical. That's the growth in the city, and it is. We've had strong growth over the years. The one thing that we do notice is that the growth is increasing more in residential property, which is good, but it also has the effect of being more beneficial to commercial than it is to residential. it's great to have any type of growth. People would take that growth any day, but you really want your growth to be focused on, office, industrial, and the like, because that's where you want to see the tax get shifted to. So, we do the shift already, but when there's more growth in commercial, it's more beneficial to residents as opposed to when you see more homes being built and, more apartments. That adds to the residential growth, which again is good for a city, but it does, if you want growth, you want growth in the commercial areas.
Okay.
And that's why
you read my mind. You knew that was going to be my next question. So I'm glad that you answered that. I do think it's important for us. And when I was looking through the data, it was clear that the bulk of that was property value increasing, I assume, and some new home development, I assume, is part of that as well. Okay. So when you look at that on the surface, it says, oh, our tax base has gone up, right? So even if the tax rate is identical to what it was, more revenue comes into the city because the value has gone up by some, a few $million, significant amount of money. I'm not going to do math. It's the end of my day on a Monday, but people can look at the data and calculate it out. The growth in revenue expectations that we have as a result of that, is that offset by rising costs of things like healthcare for city employees, or does that provide us additional increases in things we might apply towards infrastructure or other things? And I'm putting grants aside for the moment that we know might also come in those areas.
So the thing that is somewhat a little bit tricky is the growth, and it translates into taxable revenue. That's called the tax levy. And the more of the tax levy that you use to cover your expenses, the greater your tax burden is going to be on the residents in the commercial. So people have to understand that we have all this growth, and that translates into an increased tax levy. And we don't use all of our tax levy. If we used our entire tax levy, the taxes that the residents would be paying would be astronomical right now. So even though we have that growth, which is, I want to reiterate this, you have that growth, we don't use all of that taxing ability. And that's what it's hard to understand. So people say, well, we have all these new developments going in. That's money that we have, isn't it? It's available money. And when you use that levy, that's when you have tax burden. If you don't use all the levy and we don't use all that growth, then it's there for us at another time. And right now, we have an available tax levy of 148 million. Okay. And our tax levy this year is somewhere near about 120. The usable that we're using is about 123. So we're leaving 25 million in unused taxable levy.
Now, is that because there are limitations on how much of you can do? So I think it's 2.5% or something that you can use, or is it because we're sort of consciously choosing we want to keep the burden down as reasonably as we can for residents?
Want to keep the burden down, and you make a good point that you can use every year your tax levy goes up 2.5% plus new growth, and the new growth is what adds to that levy. And people say, well, you have all that. We just don't use it. We don't use it all, but it's available for us to use it. If we don't use it this year, we could use it, next year. But again, that's one of the things that's strong. You'll see that Woburn's not the only community that has an excess levy. If not, most communities have an excess levy, and some similar to us, some far greater than us. Like Cambridge. If you looked up Cambridge's excess levy, it's astronomical.
Okay.
But it's a good thing to have, Samantha, not to bore people, but to have that excess levy it's a good thing to have, because again, that's like it's like a savings that you can go back and use if an emergency were to happen.
Yep. And and just so people aren't paying, you can't go back in time and collect for past years.
No.
Right. What we mean is there as you look and plan for the following year, you can take
you could use it, but again, if you use that levy, it's not free money, it's taxable. So when you use the levy anytime, that turns into a tax burden on
Yeah.
both residential and commercial.
Okay. And when we look at things like new development, it's not well, correct. I don't actually know the answer. I was going to ask a question in a way that presumed an answer, and I don't want to do that.
That's all right.
It's not, we can't go, oh, these two new developments, your tax rate is X because, here's a new development tax rate that is different from the rest of residential tax rate, or could we choose to do that in some way?
No, you have, you have to have the same, that same dollar rate that we have, the nine, I should know, 933 or 934.
934, I think is what I wrote down.
So that is universal across residential, whether it's a single family, that's what residential tax rates, the same thing. Apartment buildings pay the same thing. It's a residential tax rate. Whereas all commercial pays the same commercial tax rate. It's uniform among the classes, and we only have residential, commercial, and personal property, which is commercial.
The reason I point that out is there's a lot of people say, hey, there's new buildings going in, those people should pay a burden on the infrastructure that's going there, and they do through their tax rate, but we can't hand select increasing their rates without increasing your rates. And so I want to make sure that people understood that is.
It has to be, that tax rate is applied universally amongst residential, and then the commercial is against commercial.
Okay. And when I looked at the difference from last year, it's inconsequential almost, right? So if you look at from a tax rate for residents, it looked like it increased like a cent, and for commercial, like 9 cents, like the increase and decreases are tiny, correct? Commercial
went down. It's a pretty good amount. So they may see a little bit of a decrease.
And was that in a hope to stimulate activity, or what was the reason?
No, it's really just based on what the value is, and the value is done. The values are done by the appraiser office, John Conley, and they have to be supported by comparable values. So
so residential values went up, commercial property values went down effectively.
Or stayed about the same. Some commercial did go down. We talk about this all the time. The value of a hotel may have gone down somewhat, but the values have to be approved by the Mass DOR too. So it's a process that is done very thoroughly by the appraiser's office and then confirmed by DOR.
Super valuable. I also just point out to people who know the taxes are not just homeowner property taxes. There's other property taxes like our excise tax. Is that fall in that category as well?
No, so they don't fall in this classification. The excise tax on your automobile, those taxes are called local receipts. Okay. And we kind of had that discussion last week with regard to ARPA funds and what we were using ARPA funds to replace. And excise tax, excise tax have been pretty strong even through the pandemic. That's like you said, on the tax that you pay on your vehicle, that comes to the city as a form of a local receipt, not a real estate tax. Okay,
awesome. Thank you for answering all these questions. So you just sort of summarize, we remain very competitive and on the low side in terms of tax contributions from residents compared to comparable cities that are around us. Our overall tax rates aren't going to change substantially this year from last year. Overall value of properties in Woburn has raised. This is kind of a fair summary of.
It's a great summary. And the one thing, just to be clear, is that, the tax rate, went up a penny, but our values, which is a good thing, because it's a sign of a strong community. Our values are going up. And when the values go up, if your values are going up 5-6%, even though the tax rate goes down, if your value goes up, the tax bill is going up. And we talked about the tax bill increasing, but we have great services in the city, and when you compare us to the cities and towns around us, our bills are going up, pretty modestly, or in same as, like, I compare us to Burlington, pretty similar to Burlington.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Hopefully, we're going to talk to Pastor Bill about the vigil. We'll get some information, but I think we'll see you there on Sunday.
I'll be there Sunday. Your mother dropped off a couple goodies for me, and
Go
I'm all
mom.
set for Sunday. Yeah, she's great. So I'm looking forward to it. But
That's great.
otherwise
I
than that,
promise you, she didn't text me and hound me about this today at all. So it's just my own curiosity.
I'm going to do two quick plugs, and I'm going to get off. One, the second shot for the 5 to 11-year-olds is going to be at the high school, 9 to 2. We are going to start doing booster clinics beginning the 16th. That's the booster shot for people who already have their two. So we'll start that on the 16th at the senior center. We're going to do the first one focused for 65 plus, and then we're going to shoot for every Thursday. We're going to skip the 23rd, which is 2 days before Christmas, because sometimes people get an adverse effect, but we'll start up the 30th and we'll try to run them every Thursday in January until the demand wanes. But we'll step up and provide the booster shots for our residents. And
that's great. And will people register for those?
Yes, they'll be registered, and we'll be putting that information out tomorrow to the seniors on how to register, and then the general public will be on the VAC site. So it's good. Gives people another place to get. There's plenty of places to get the booster. There's just been a little bit of log jam, and anytime you provide, additional sites, it's a good thing for our residents.
It certainly is. And will we be offering boosters across the types of vaccines, or just for certain ones?
We're just going to get you can mix and match. So whether you started off with the Johnson or Moderna or Pfizer, they said it doesn't matter which one you get. Perfect. So we'll be probably, I say we'll probably get Moderna, but it's whatever the state supplies.
Whatever the state supplies.
Moderna or Pfizer. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it very much. Good. Have a good rest of your night.
See you Sunday. Bye, guys.
Yeah, we'll see you then. Thank you. Let's talk about the vigil since we started that conversation. Pastor Bill, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I had the pleasure of attending last year, but for those folks who might not be familiar with us, tell us a little bit about what the vigil is about and what attendees can expect.
So we talk about the vigil as a vigil of remembrance and hope, and it is focused on issues of gun safety and remembering people who are survivors of gun violence, people who were victims of gun violence. The vigil is designed to coincide with the anniversary of the shooting at the Sandy Hook Elementary School, which was on December 14th in 2012. And these vigils, similar vigils, occur all across the country at this time of the year. So we have gotten involved with Moms Demand Action and Woburn Welcomes, local groups, to have this vigil so we can remember people who have been impacted by gun violence, but we specifically talk about hope because we want this vigil to be uplifting. We want people to be looking to a better future where, we will be impacted much, much less by gun violence. And so there'll be not only remembrance, but there'll be conversation around ways people can get involved in trying to limit gun violence in this country.
Thank you for that. And it's held at the Methodist Church, correct?
Right. So the vigil will be on Sunday at 4 o'clock at the Woburn United Methodist Church, which is at 523 Main Street. Our sanctuary is up on the second floor, and we'll have people showing you how to get in. We also have elevator, so the building is completely accessible. So everybody is welcome and everybody should be able to join. We're going to ask people to wear masks because we want to be safe. And we are also live streaming it on the church's Facebook page. So if people are concerned about coming out in public, which I totally understand, they can join us on Facebook and they'll be able to watch it live. The sanctuary is a big space. It's a 2 to 3 story high sanctuary. So we feel we've been very confident and comfortable with the air exchange and just the amount of space for having people in there. But we're going to wear masks. And again, people can watch from home over Facebook.
Thank you so much for giving us those details. It is a wonderful space to have the vigil. It is open and airy and welcoming. And whether you are a member of the church or not, everyone is welcome to attend. And as we all know, for those of you who watch the show regularly, unfortunately, Woburn has not been immune to gun violence. And we've had unfortunate things happening in our own city. So this is a great way to rally around the people who've been affected by them and let them know that we care and we as a community want to support them and what their needs are.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, this is a local issue, unfortunately. We're going to have one of our speakers is Amy Cardoso, who's a teacher at the high school, and she has been actively involved with people who have been impacted by gun violence. So she's going to speak about her involvement and, you know, how it has impacted people. So I think it's going to be a great program. We're going to have Diane Cinto speaking from Moms Demand Action. She'll be talking about the work they do. We're going to have musical guests, Esther Friedman and Susan Levine, who are wonderful local musicians who are also involved in music therapy. So working with people to facilitate recovery and empowerment through their music. The mayor's going to speak. I will speak briefly. So, and we'll have electric candles, so we'll be safe, and we'll light candles with the music. So it's going to be a great event. We're asking people to wear green. I've got my green shirt on today. Green is the color of this vigil. So if you want to put on your green, that'll be great. And it's seasonal. You know, for us, it's the Advent season. Advent is a season of hope and a season of peace. And those two themes go great with this vigil.
Thank you so much for sharing the details with us. I hope to see many of you there. It's a really wonderful way just to feel part of the community and to look forward and be there for each other. So I thought it was really touching and moving last year, as I'm sure it will be this year as well.
Yeah, thanks, Samantha. And it is a community event. This is open to everybody. It's not a church event. It's open to everybody who wants to join us.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your space with us so that it could be possible. Thank you so much. Next up, we're going to completely switch gears, Ed. It's hard to follow a vigil, but we're going to find a way and we're going to talk about all the important work that Waste Management does. Thank you, Ed, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Samantha. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So Ed, you probably don't watch the show as much as some of the folks in town. I'm terrible at pronouncing names. So tell us how to pronounce your last name.
Sure. My last name is pronounced Pacek.
Pacek. I might have been able to get that right if I trusted myself a little bit more. Thanks for joining us, Ed. You work for Waste Management, who handles all of our recycling programs and such, correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So not only does Waste Management service the town as far as solid waste and recycling collection goes, but we're also located right here in the city of Woburn.
Great. Double bonus points. We like that. So we are actually lucky that people like myself who seem to create an extraordinary amount of trash and recycling every week. My husband does not understand how I do it. But he knows when I go out of time, it's less, so it's all my fault. But we don't have a limit in Woburn on the standard trash and recycling that we can provide, which is sort of unlike at least some of our other neighboring cities. How does it compare to most of the cities around us?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, the city of Woburn offers its residents a very generous program. And so the other local municipalities do have some restrictions. And so yeah, I guess maybe the flip side of that for the city is that it does generate a little bit more trash. But, you know, I think that having the no limit certainly is a nice convenience, and it's a nice offering to the residents. But, you know, just because the city doesn't have the limits and it has this nice program, it doesn't mean that people still shouldn't practice the 3 R's, the reduce, reuse, and recycle. And so not only does Woburn have no limit on the trash, it also has unlimited recycling. So that's a nice benefit as well. So we encourage everybody to take advantage of that unlimited recycling and also consider other elements here too. I mean, the reuse, for example. So, I mean, it's certainly convenient to put a sofa out on the curb and just have it disappear. But, you know, why not consider donating an item like that and helping somebody in need? And at the same time, you're producing less waste for the city. So, you know, there's some great things for people to consider, but at the end of the day, it is a great program. It's very generous. And I think it's certainly less restrictive than some of the other area programs.
Yeah, we have some great resources that accept donations of, furniture, for example, and other things, the Wish Project. We also have a great Everything's Free Woburn page. I know I've received and given some great pieces that needed to change home. So I thank you for reminding us about that. I want to talk about recycling because I think, a couple years ago, recycling was probably more generous in the sense that where these things ultimately end up was taking a lot, everything, probably more than what should have been in a recycling bin. My understanding is sort of where these things now end up are stricter about what they will accept. And so we need to be more careful about what ends up in the recycling bins. Tell us kind of, at a high level, you don't have to go through the entire list, the kinds of things that we should be recycling today.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the big things to avoid would just be plastic bags. And I think the next biggest thing would be plastic bags that contain recycling. So, there's a lot of well-meaning people, I think, who will take their recyclables and place them inside a bag because, it's convenient and it's contained and we understand that. But we would ask everybody who's participating in the recycling program to just put their recyclables loosely in the bin. Because even if you have the recyclables in a bag, it's going to get treated like trash when it makes it to the plant, and that would be a shame. We don't want to lose any of the recyclables. The commodity markets right now are very good. They're very strong, and so the commodities that we accept through the recycling program are actually quite valuable. So we don't want to lose any of that material. And then I just say some other big ones that we see that create some issues for us at the plant are what we call tanglers. So there's a lot of machinery that sorts the material at the plant. And, you could imagine with all those moving parts, things like garden hoses and ropes and Christmas lights, they all get tangled up in there, and we have to shut the plant down, and it can be a real issue for us. So, when you're decorating the tree this year and you got that string of lights that just doesn't light up, I hate to tell you to put it in the trash, but that really would be the best thing to do. It's going to allow us to be able to more efficiently and safely recycle all the other things that are good in the bin.
Great, that's excellent. Now there are some things that should not go in recycling and should not go in regular trash, like hazardous waste types of things, maybe some oils and chemicals and things. And we don't have a hazardous waste disposal in Woburn. Where do you? We have any pickup at all that happens, or recommendations of where people should take it?
So the city does not have a hazardous waste program, but there may be some in the area. I believe there's one in Lexington that residents may be able to contact. So I think you could maybe Google that and see if there's something if that's something that would be available to residents.
Okay, that's excellent. One of the things that people say, for those people who are very good at recycling, it can get to be a rather large amount of things. And right now we recycle every other week instead of every week. What is there any opportunity to look at doing that more frequently? Is it a factor of equipment, resources, budget? Like, what are the things that affect the decision to go every other week instead of every week?
Well, it's actually all of the above that you mentioned there. So, the reality is weekly recycling would require us to add an additional truck and driver, which, that's an expensive proposition. And I think when we look at that, and I think when the city looks at that, they consider the big picture, which is that it's really like a diminishing return on that investment. So we would be doubling the collection capacity by adding that additional truck and driver, but we would only anticipate maybe a 10 to 25% increase in the recycling volume. So that's something that, I think when you're trying to be fiscally responsible, there's, I think we're kind of at that sweet spot right now. We're certainly able to offer weekly recycling, but, ultimately that'd be a choice the city would have to make.
Okay. And then sort of talking about special pickups, there's special yard waste pickups. And I know we do a tree pickup after the holidays for those who have Christmas trees that, and I don't mean the artificial, but real trees that need to be disposed of. When is the next one coming up for us?
Well, so yard waste runs throughout the fall, and we're actually in the midst of that right now. So December 6th through 10th, which is the current week, is the last week of yard waste collection. So and then tree collection will start at the end of December. So right after Christmas, that Monday, December 27th, there's going to be a week of tree collection, and then the week following New Year's, so the first week of January will also be a week of tree collection. So last week of December, first week of January, we'll be out collecting everybody's trees.
Great. Awesome. That's great. I appreciate that. One of the things that I struggle with is what are the best trash cans for me to have that keep rats out, frankly, right? But also don't make the job of waste management harder than it needs to be. I know we don't mandate specific receptacles, which is a benefit for us. It gives us flexibility. But if somebody is investing in new trash cans for their home or recycling bins for their home, is there any guidelines or things that you'd like us to take into account?
Well, I mean, I'm not here to endorse any particular brand names or anything like that. I mean, waste management, when we have communities where we do offer barrels, we provide our own or through our own vendors. But, I'd say in general, where the residents have the ability to go out and purchase their own, I would just say this, keep it in good condition, and, if it needs to get replaced, then replace it. And I think there's some ways you can help keep it in good condition, and that's, don't have it be too heavy, and don't let it get filled up with water, especially this time of year where it could rain and then freeze, and then when that happens, then material gets stuck inside, and then you have somebody, when it's time to empty it, the barrel has to get banged, and I mean, those are the kinds of things that can really wreak havoc on the barrels. So I mean, and also makes it more difficult for our guys out on the street too. So I would just say, don't overload the bags, don't overload the barrels, and try to keep things from freezing, especially this time of year.
Great. So this is a great time of year where we always like to recognize and thank a lot of people in our community who do lots of hard jobs that we don't want to do, like our trash pickup, and a time that we sometimes make extra messes because of it. Aside from the sort of good hygiene of not making things excessively heavy, there is a weight limit on barrels. I don't know if you know the weight limit offhand. I don't know it offhand. Do you?
Usually it's 50 pounds. But I'd say, like with a bag, for example, I mean, that's something that might just make it a little bit easier if it's a little bit less than that. But I mean, yeah, we have a weight limit, and then also anything that I'd say probably a good guideline is something that one person could easily handle.
Yeah, and we have to remember, I mean, people are physically, we put them at the end of our street, and then they don't magically get transported into the truck. Somebody is physically lifting it up, emptying things, and putting it down. So for our sensitivity around that, and anything else that we can do over the holidays to show our appreciation and make the job of waste management a little bit, I don't know that I'd say easier, but less difficult.
Yeah, well, I mean, just to kind of follow up on what we were just talking about with the weight limit there. I mean, just because something, a resident can lift up a bag or a barrel, and their thought might be, well, hey, these guys lift this stuff up all day long. They should be conditioned. If I can do it, they can do it. Well, I'm sure that's the case. But I think the key is that, yes, they are doing it all day long. So it really becomes a safety concern for us that it's not a one-time lift for our employees. It's a lift that they're making thousands of times every single day for, maybe in cases many years. So it's not so much the fact that a resident can lift something, and therefore our drivers should be able to lift it too. It's about trying to, respect the fact that this is their job, and at the end of the day, nobody wants to get hurt at work. And so that's just something to be respectful there. But I would just say in general, our crews do work hard all year round. And I would say that they're always grateful for any appreciation expressed by the residents. So, that's always appreciated.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing it. The last little thing I wanted to just mention. So I know through no fault of Waste Management, is I live where my trash barrels are is at the top of a hill. And so when the wind comes, invariably after they are empty, it seems to always come up and my trash barrels go down the hill and we go chase it and it's all fine. And, we get our barrels back. But is there anything, oftentimes they're picking up, they're emptying and they're sort of tossing back down the barrels. Is there any guidance or thoughts of anything that we can do to limit barrels moving around or lids getting separated and things like that?
I mean, sometimes depending on what kind of barrels people are purchasing, the lids will be hinged on the barrel. So I mean, that's something that would certainly help prevent the losing the lid. As far as having a solution for wind and things like that, I mean, I wish I did, but I think that's just sort of a universal issue.
It's just the way it is. Get used to it, right? Get to know your neighbors because you might be chasing your barrels down.
Label your barrel.
Well, Ed, thank you so much for joining us. Please thank everyone for their hard work. We know this is messy, difficult, strenuous work that people have to do each and every day, and we really appreciate it. And thanks for reminding us about the kinds of things that can and can't be recycled. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
And Woburn, as always, please continue to take good care of each other.